I got on well with Sophie, and it was nice, and it was a nice bit of the Brigadier and Battlefield, you know, the way I always played him when I had that little scene which wasn't all shown, you know, when the Brigadier sort of, everyone assumes he's going to be a male chauvinist. He's not actually at all. When he finds out there's a Brigadette, we called her, you know, Bambira, Brigadier, the other, the woman, Lady Brigadier, Angela Bruce. And, you know, the Brigadier says, then Ace meets him and immediately assumes, oh God, this pomp so far, you know. And so the Brigadier just looks at the camera and says, oh dear, women, not really my field. But they weren't, you see, they weren't the Brig's field. He was happier probably in the mess with the men, and probably. Like a lot of army people are. I suppose I'm very happy.
Made up for it.
I'm very happy with women. No, I have no problem at all. But yes, the magic was still there.
Annika, I'd just like to ask, now you've had a chance to listen to some of the audio soundtracks, has it brought back any memories that you might have forgotten before?
Sadly, no. Not really, because my stories are so thin and far between that I'm always, happy to sort of be able to drag something up, But not really, no. Just there was one in The Smugglers where the guy is saying, take the strain, because he's being, but I think it was cut out actually, because he's being hung. I might have more stories, because when I was in Australia, one of the fans there had got a tape of all the outtakes that they cut off of me, in the Macroter, in the 10th, which one it is, but you see me being injected with a needle, and they thought that was too violent, and I'm going to be sent this tape, and that might prove interesting, because this is all stuff that we've none of us seen before, so, that might. But otherwise, I do my best, but, I'm getting old and the memory's getting thinner and thinner. Thanks for the question, though.
Annika, on the subject of the audio soundtracks, you mentioned having listened to The Highlanders, for which Fraser Hines had recorded a linking narration.
Yes.
If the BBC were minded to give some of the other stories in which you appeared,
yes, please.
Which no longer appeared in the archives, such as the Smugglers, would you be interested in recording linking narration for some of those releases?
In fact, it's almost on the cards. We've put it out that I'm totally available, and so they know I'm totally available. So if it comes out, then yes. People always ask me, would you like to have been in the Few Doctors? Yes, I would. Yes. Absolutely.
Right, I think that's all we've got time for, unfortunately. It's time for lunch now.
Only 3 questions, Paul.
Listen, you have to, when you see Colin, you have to ask him, because I don't want to spoil the story, but he came on the stage in Australia. Ask him what he wore when he walked on the stage in Australia, because it was wonderful, and he might do it for you. He was absolutely hilarious.
His pantomime costume, no.
I won't spoil it, because it's his story, really. I'd like to, but I won't. By the way, there were lots of Brig fans in Australia. When we had the sort of fancy dress, they all came up as Brigs. I thought you'd like that.
A few Brig fans?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Well, men or women?
Mostly men, yes.
Well, I'm glad to hear this. Well, I'm glad to hear this, because honestly, the first time I went to an American convention in Miami, the first one I did, and I'll be very quick, the first time I went ever to a convention in America, I walked this hotel in Fort Lauderdale, walked in a hotel, and there were 4 women dressed as the Brigadier. Pat Troughton did not believe it. He could not believe it. I said, Pat, I don't believe you. I said, it's true. And the berry, and the moustache. And I was so staggered that I immediately thought, now what do I do? I know, I'll go to the bar. That's the best thing. So I went to the bar.
When in doubt, go to the bar.
That really is all we have time for. Ladies and gentlemen, Annika Wills and Nicholas Courtney. To have a look at the role of the Doctor Who companion and how the role developed over the series' history. So to start with, in the 60s, sorry Annika, obviously 60s, that's your time. How did you see the role of the Doctor Who companion when you took the role?
Well, you see, when I started, it didn't even have the name companion. That's what Brenda says later. You know, you were just part of the team that the Doctor had, the two kids that he travelled with. So the whole sort of myth of the companion has been later, really. Yeah. Take it away.
It's a very good answer. No. Points for the answer, please.
I started to get really good with answering questions, saying yes.
Very short.
No, that's very good, because it is part of a team, isn't it? That's what makes it work. And I never went in as the one companion. When I went into Who, I had never really watched Who all the time, but I did catch the odd episode. And the one thing I tried to latch on to was, what did I want out of it as a viewer? What was my criteria watching it? And it was so that I understood episode 3 when I hadn't seen episodes 1 and 2. So I actually had, in every episode, a beginning, a middle, and an end, so that you could see that episode as a whole and enjoy it without thinking, oh, can't get the hang of this. And that's what I found very important. And sometimes it was so difficult to do because we all shot out of order, didn't we? Yes. You know, you had all the corridor scenes because you had the corridor set from episodes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever it was. And I always remember John saying, are we out of breath in this scene? Where have we come from?
You jolly well ought to be.
So were you filming yours? How did you work?
We used to rehearse in studio rehearse, you mean, from 10 in the morning until the tea time slot, 6 o'clock. And then we recorded like a play, 7:30 to 10, total. Unless there was a very, very difficult special effect. And then we'd have to get made up and dressed just to record that in the middle of the afternoon.
Right.
Is that what you did?
So you did one episode? You just were doing one episode?
No. John? 2 day stands, 1 episode each day, that's right. Then we had, if there was a 4-parter, you would have 4 studios in 2 blocks. And then you'd rehearse the first 2 blocks. You'd have about 10 days rehearsal at North Acton. You'd have the weekend in between, I think, to let it sink in after the producers run, technical run. And then you'd do the studio Monday, Tuesday. And then, did we get a day off then? I'm not sure. We either had a day off and then we went back and took a 10-day rehearsal. But when we had Dougie Camfield, we were doing the second one of Dougie's. And Dougie, well, it was like, you know, he had the bully beef and he had the fallout shelter at the bottom of his garden. And it was like being in the army. And he used to say, right, A-team, we're not doing so well here. Will everyone come in on Sunday? Can't pay you, but will you come in? And Tom would bring the pork pies, I brought some soup. You know, it was a team effort. It was only other people who called you the companion, wasn't it?
Yes.
Which was very nice, actually, because it kind of gave you a title.
Yes.
I quite like that.
If you're looking at the character of the companion, Annika, yours was like the first of the sort of termed Bolivar type companions, wasn't it? The very pretty girl.
Yeah.
And that's sort of something that's stuck over the years, despite all the efforts to change that. How do you feel?
Well, again, when I came in, I wasn't aware, but since we did lots of interviews, and one of them was for Lust in Space, and then they asked me, you know, how does it feel to have been the first of a long line of wonderful, beautiful, sexy ladies? I hadn't really been aware that I was. So I thought, oh yes, well, nice, yes. I didn't really know. What I did though was that you don't see it because it's all been wiped and gone. But when I got the part, she was supposed to be a sort of debutante, and I kept getting cast in this role as debutante. Maybe it's the way I speak. But anyway, I just thought it was really boring. So you just say, this is good, you know, I'm up on this panel with the boys in the suits here. Because what I actually did was, I said, yes, right, okay. So when you see the first one, there's Polly sort of using lines like, you know, oh, Fabby, you know. And as soon as I could, and nobody's looking, and because they're all busy with business and Pat getting, you know, regeneration and stuff, nobody's looking, I've actually changed all that, and I've become much more like myself, because I thought it was much more interesting. So, and nobody actually said, oi, and I go, you've sort of slid off your original character. No. It was the stereotype that I found so boring. You know, I wanted to do something else with.
Because you were the only girl to have shared the TARDIS with 3 men at the same time.
I know, and then there was
Did that
one...
limit your...
Limit my... No, it wasn't. I like that. There was one thing that I watched, which was when we were in the moon base, and the entire cast was fellows. There wasn't another single woman around. Luckily, there were a few women on the crew in the, you know, otherwise I'd have been totally on my own with just these guys, you know.
We quite often had that. I think I quite often had that, and I all of a sudden used to realise it, and I used to sort of gravitate to the makeup a bit, just for a bit of female chitty chat.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah.
Is it for both of you that you had to go for several stories where you were the only female character?
Yeah.
Did you feel there should have been more? I mean, or was this just a sign of the times?
I don't know that you really didn't have much time to
I
think
loved
like
it.
that. You know, you just
I loved it. I did, because you know, if you're the only girl on the series for a while, I mean that's your only power, actually, isn't it? Really, and also it's your weak point as well. And it used to be very interesting to see how different people would treat you. And not that ever you were overlooked; you were always considered. But I do think that sometimes you were seen like your character.
Yeah.
And I got to the stage where I thought, well, everyone is working very quickly. I'm being served very well. I mean, you know, I don't have to take a stand about this. So instead of really putting ideas forward which will hold up production and possibly be rejected, I'll just do it. And by then I knew what I was doing. And quite often a director would turn and he'd say, oh, like, you know, I didn't know I'd done that. Or you keep it in. I go, oh, you know, not quite, you know, like that. But I have to say, and it's very nice that John's here when I'm saying it, that I was never, ever, I always knew, how can I put this? No, I'm going to be grand. That Barry Letts thought I was good and that John thought I was good. And the producers never let me lose sight of that. If I felt a little disregarded in other areas, which sometimes you can, you know, people don't have time for niceties. You just get up and get on with it. And sometimes you think, God, you know, do they realise there's an assistant in this series as well? You know, they have something to do with this. But as long as, you know, someone at the top, you know, appreciates you, and that goes a long way. And, you know, I would say that to Barry as well. No, because I didn't meet John till later on when we were doing 5 Doctors. And it was lovely to have someone watching and thinking, yes, that's an assistant, that's how she should behave. No, it's lovely.
Yeah, I think for me it was Innes Lloyd. He always was really kind to me, and
That's lovely.
I felt very...
It's very necessary. Isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
Because
Somebody
you
who
can feel
appreciates you.
sometimes quite
Yeah,
sidelined.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Especially when it was Mike and Fraser and Ben. You know, I mean Pat and Fraser.
Well, you're working with very strong characters, aren't you? You're working with very strong personalities
Yes.
as well.
Yeah, so you had to really sort of hold up your own.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
I did it by batting my eyelashes.
I'm just well, use everything you've got.
Everything you have.
Absolutely.
The shorter the skirt. I'm going to get noticed here.
I wonder whether I could just interpose a question.
Of course.
Yes.
Do you think the scripts treated you well?
No. Actually, I don't. Actually, I think it was definitely lines were sort of tacked onto you because because it was handy. I think that it got better. It definitely got better. But in the early days, no, and one was never asked. Your opinion was not of any input. No, definitely not. No, it was very sexist. In my day, it was really sexist. But in my day, I didn't even know it was sexist.
They hadn't invented
These were the
sexism.
dark ages.
I've probably fared a little better. It is very difficult for writers, isn't it, to have someone there who's to convey to the audience everything that this fellow with 2 hearts is saying that they don't understand. And, you have to ask the question, are we, where are we? Yes, doctor, no, doctor. And actually, it is that, how do you do that each week? Yes. Make the same mistakes and still try and be as real as you can. And I used to do my read-throughs, and I would have worked on the script or just read it at home, and I would alter something. I would alter it, but I would look up at a producer, and they were with you all the way, and if they liked it, they'd go that. and you just, no, right, I couldn't do that. But you had to look out for yourself, didn't you? And they wanted you to, because you want a better script. But you know, they're not just writing for one character, they have to see the whole. And you know, it is difficult as an assistant to actually be thought to have any intelligence. Yes.
I think the problem from the suit end of it, as you call it, is that the role of the assistant or companion was created originally to give the doctor someone to talk to and for audience identification. The rationale of a human being, although some companions have been alien, but you know, on the whole, it's basically asking the questions that the viewer would like answered.
Right.
And I think that over the years, I think the role has become more substantial, and I think that it isn't, that primary function is not now, I'm talking in the past, but not recently now, the kind of essential ingredient. Consequently, during my period of 10 years and, I don't know, 7 or 8 different companions, we tried to devise characters in the front office that had a shape, that had a background, that had a raison d'etre, that had a sort of individuality. Yes, you can condense it into one line, brassy Australian air stewardess. but you know, they had a whole, you know, scree about their background.
History with them. Yes.
Now, the problem, it seems to me, and I only speak from experience, is that ultimately you start off by introducing that character who's got all these facets and all these abilities and all these different tendencies of humour or not humour or sympathy or not sympathy, whatever they might be, all these individual characteristics. You also want the character to progress. You don't want to be stuck, you know, in the same mould for weeks and weeks and weeks.
Yeah.
As Liz says, making the same mistakes, you know, not learning to check that the door isn't going to slam behind you.
And you've still got to have a cliffhanger, you've still got to have a format.
And exactly, and because of the format of the show, which is basically 24 and a half minutes in my day, less opening and closing titles, less a minute's reprise, left you with 21 minutes. And in that 21 minutes, you have to resolve last week's cliffhanger, develop the plot, and get the doctor or the companion, or preferably both, into another cliffhanger.
Another script.
Now, in that time, practically speaking, there isn't even time to develop the doctor's character, let alone the companions. So, whatever the intentions of the suits are, ultimately, by the sheer format of it, the assistant, the companion, has to be regarded, it's a horrible word, a cipher. Because there isn't really time. Occasionally you can have a story that is devoted to the companion. Well,
But that's not what Doctor
I do.
Who's about, is it really?
No.
It's not. It's about how the assistant will, how the companion will. She can only work off the doctor. It's like if you've got a George Formby film, you can't have everyone strumming ukuleles. You can only have one doctor, and you've got to bounce off him. I was very lucky with my first story. I was also very hammy, actually. You could tell I'd done a lot of theatre before that I saw it recently. But I was given a very, very strong springboard to come off. For all I say that Alan Bromley never directed me, it would have been better maybe if he had toned it down a bit. But I was given a very strong springboard, and after that, I don't think they ever let Sarah be as strong again. But she didn't need to be. I felt quite happy that I had been established. And if you do go around in time and space with a person like the Doctor, with a all his credentials, you are going to change. And sometimes you'll be silly, and sometimes you'll... And it doesn't matter, because you're not shopping in Marks and Spencer, you're not going home to cook a meal. You are in this very, very strange, one-off world. And you can actually... It actually does give you more scope than you think, as long as you sort of remember your place.
but I think that's absolutely true, and I think that many companions, the best one for the companion is the one that introduces them, because there has to be a
Something
focus.
has to be set.
The audience has to want
Yes.
them to climb aboard the TARDIS at the end of episode 4.
I was served very well.
Yeah. And I think that would apply, I don't know whether the audience would agree, that would apply to Perry, Nicola Bryant. Her first story is basically all about Perry. And Ace's first story is really all about Ace. And the Doctor, sorts out a problem meanwhile. Mark Strickson, I remember getting very frustrated because his best story was his first. And, any actor always thinks it can only get better from here. but in fact, I think, would the three of you agree, that in fact it's the reverse in Doctor Who?
Yes. It is in the way of strength of character and content, and then really you're left to sink and swim a bit on your own, aren't you?
Is there something here about audience expectations as well, that they expect certain qualities, certain values in companions vis-à-vis the Doctor? And you can't depart too far from those.
Well, if you do, it's not Doctor
Who,
is it?
it's something else.
You're in a different story.
Yes.
Yeah.
Discuss.
It's very interesting for me to be up here listening to you, John, because you were absolutely right. We had 21 minutes. So that, in fact, all this we now talk about and mull it over and discuss and so on, at the time, you've got 21 minutes and there's this great story going on. And I don't remember ever actually, you've just got to get on with it. You've got your lines and you've got the situation and you're in there as much as you can be. And, there wasn't time, actually. I was never growling or snarling and saying, oh, there's not enough for me. I didn't feel like that.
We record at 7:30.
That's right.
We finish at 10.
Finish at 10.
And then we go to the pub. Yeah!
Ian Martin said it was very good in one of the things with the Epsilons. They were we were in a scene together, and we weren't adding to the scene. And he went up to the director and he said, look, Liz and I aren't doing any of this scene. Why are you trying to accommodate us with the camera, making the shots difficult for yourself? We've been established, people know we're here, let's just not be shot in the scene and go out. So when you're there, you're pertinent to the scene. And when you're not, it doesn't matter. That's a very good springboard to go from, I feel.
We had a script once called Kinder, and it was written, or at least it was commissioned, before we decided to include Nyssa as a regular companion. It's before we knew that Tom was going to leave. And it was only when he made those feelings felt that we felt that to pepper the TARDIS with 3 companions might help after 7 years of huge success. And I was committed to, both of whom were coming in my first year, one of whom was only coming in, I think, for the last story of the season. And this was commissioned for the following season without this character Nyssa. So it was written for the Doctor, Adric, and Tegan. And the script came in, it was a very, very powerful script. Both Adric and Tegan had essential parts in it, non-cipher roles. And it was a terrific part for the Doctor, which was Peter Davison by then. And we asked the writer, could you accommodate this extra companion? And I have to admit, the script editor and I only asked in a half-hearted way. We knew what the answer was going to be. And he said, but there isn't any room without her just hanging around and saying the odd line. So the solution to our problem, I'm preaching to the converted I know, is in episode 1 in the TARDIS, she had an attack of the flu And in the final scene of episode 4, she got well. Now, I think that was better for the script, better for the actress, better for the show as a whole. You know?
It dilutes it almost.
Yes.
Right, John, I think it's about time I heard from you a bit more.
Oh, yes.
How difficult did you find it to bring to life the character of a tin dog using only your voice?
Not in the slightest. Not difficult at all. No, it's an extraordinary experience to be called in to be, if you like, a companion without a human form. And I wondered about the advisability of having a companion that potentially knew more than the Doctor did. The Doctor, obviously, as John has said, needs somebody to spark off. And so from that point of view, the character was perfectly valid and worked very well. But we've heard, those of us who were here at the earlier panel, heard how difficult K9 actually was to work with physically in the studios. So the relationship was a little qualified by technology, or lack of it. But as far as relating to the Doctor character, I knew that I was one step ahead of the Doctor, always. This arrogance, this inbuilt arrogance that K9 had. And so K9 could quite happily be slapped down by the Doctor, who telling him that certain things weren't relevant. And she said, yes, they were, or he'd just be turned off, or whatever. Get back to the other point, when Three's a Crowd, there was a production, there's the episode of, the Green Monsters one, when I appeared as somebody who could stand and see actors in their eyes rather than... The Power of Kroll, that's right, yes. I didn't have to act at knee level. I could stand up. And of course, K9 appeared right at the very first of the episodes, and then was sort of confined to barracks, because I don't think had been undersealed or Z-barted or whatever it was, and couldn't pursue the adventure. And then, of course, we saw K9 again at the very end of the thing. But I think the relationship, although it wasn't a relationship in the sense that you would have had with your own doctors, it was quite a witty one, and I think it worked quite well on a certain level. Whether we exceeded our boundaries in the Tom era, I don't know. It's possible we may have done. We had fun with it enormously. We got energy from that relationship. There is no question about that.
Well, the way Tom talks about your relationship, he talks about you doing crosswords together,
Oh.
and you'd often, in dialogue, throw a clue to each other.
Oh, we would.
And that does make it come alive, because you had such a good rapport.
There was a wonderful lady, who I think was one of the production assistants, PA, Gwen Foyle? Gwen Foyle, lovely lady, who would turn up first thing in the morning in rehearsals with her copy of The Times. And of course, Tom and I were struggling, trying to take our mind off this script that we were supposed to be rehearsing, working out the Times crossword. And we would nip across and see what Gwen had done. And of course, it was all filled in. Gwen arrived with a completely full Times crossword, so we were a little baffled that way. But my crossword story you've heard before, and I'll tell you for those of you who want to hear it later.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
Because I don't know. I expect you all know, but I don't know. So when you were rehearsing, were you down on your knees?
Yes.
Oh God! So did you have to have?
I had a special low BBC trouser allowance. If you can believe that, you'll believe it.
It must have been really hard on your body, actually.
Sorry?
It must have been really hard on your body.
It was very hard on my body,
Yes.
but my mind improved.
Also on your psyche, you're always doing your regular thoughts.
Is that what you wanted to hear?
I think so.
Oh, good.
What was the question?
It was about bringing to life a character using only voice, really. But
Yes, well, don't forget, voice work, you have to put sort of 127% into voice work, because certainly if you're not seen and you haven't got a mouth that moves or eyes that move, this, that, and the other, all of your character is in your voice. Radio, I think, is a wonderful discipline. I've done so little radio in my career, really have very little indeed, but always the best pictures are on radio. Always, because the scenes are created in the mind of the listener, which is very. So voice is a very, very powerful medium, and it shouldn't be underestimated, I think.
So can I ask another question?
Of course you can.
Since I'm up here, these are great guys, yeah. So John, what I want to know, over the years, and I've been signing, people come and they bring the books, and it has to be noted that Polly was very much shoved under the carpet. There are many companion books where the wonderful stories all about the companions, all photographs, and then they'll be saying, this much, there's Polly, the dates, and then it goes on to the next companion.
Are you referring to my book? And the eyes narrowed.
So why was I dismissed? Was it because I was out of the country?
I think you were in India.
Yes. So then, did I just get shoveled in the out tray?
I mean, again, it's a long time ago. There was no other reason than I couldn't
It wasn't
get in touch with
personal.
you. Oh, you'd know if it was personal. No, not at all. No. I think I tried to get in touch through your agent, and you were in India, and frankly, I didn't know a great deal about Polly, because again, there wasn't anything really that I could refer to other than a couple of stories.
Missing, believed, wiped.
Yeah.
That's my
Which I still think to this day is such a tragedy. I can't understand it.
I have to say the early Doctor Who's that I have seen, I think are absolutely stunning, and I think they hold up today. I saw one with Wendy Padbury in a sparkly suit. I mean, I don't mean just the sparkly suit, but the whole thing, the way it was put together. I thought, my God, that's quality. Really, I would love to have seen it.
I was amazed at some of the speed of
Yes.
some of these. I mean,
The dialogue speed.
The dialogue speed. I mean, wild, coward, you know, I mean, just absolute quicksilver.
It was almost going back to films of the 30s and 40s, wasn't it? They sped out, isn't it?
Also, the length of scenes.
Yes.
You might have a scene that would be 4, 5, 6 minutes.
Which are lovely to do because there's a shape to them, isn't there?
Which didn't fit in to the later format of the programme.
Yes, yes.
But there would be this sort of really big major scene, not a row necessarily, you know, just a
Which
kind
I
of
suppose
plot
has a lot to
scene.
do with camera work.
Yeah.
It's the way the camera was used all those years ago, because the camera would be much more static.
Yeah.
So you had the
Less
scene to
cuts.
move. Yes, yes.
You know, but nowadays we're all geared to that, aren't we? You know, it's got to be
That's right.
wham, bam, high shot.
You know,
Back to the role of companions. John, you already mentioned when you became producer that you changed it from this one single strong female character to 3 younger characters, basically. What was the reasoning behind that?
Well, I felt that what I inherited was all too smart. You had the Doctor with this amazing intelligence, 2 hearts, this fantastic, you know, sort of pedigree of solving problems. His companion was effectively his equal. The Lady Romana was a time lady. You know, okay, an acolyte. At the same time, she had the potential to be as intelligent as him. You also had K9, this hyper-intelligent computer robot. I mean, I used to think, why don't the 3 of them
Just go off.
take a look at the problem and go, oh, it's a number 39. You know, so it was all too smart for its own good.
Yes.
So you had to get back to the basics of the 60s and the 70s, where you had that person saying, why?
How?
Who? Why are we doing this? Why do you think that, doctor?
Yes.
And so we brought in the young boy, the mathematician, which we thought we might develop, but we never really fully developed that potential. And then the brassy Australian, no-nonsense, you know, what the hell are you doing now? Character, you know, because it gave a different slant on it, a different slant. And then I decided, because Tom was leaving, that Nissa of Draken, who was I don't know what she was, a biotechnician or something, she was rather smart, but in a different way. But she was an alien. So you were bringing in an alien character from a different planet to help that transition. I wouldn't have kept Nissa on if Tom was staying. It would have been Tom, the boy, and the girl. Because you lay a Marcel. I wouldn't have kept Nissa on if Tom wasn't leaving. Because ideally I think that the early days, and again the 70s, with Liz's character and Ian Martin's character, I do think it's nice to have a male and a female.
I liked it.
You know, to me that's the essence of the programme. And I know that's not exactly how it started, but, you know, I think...
I always noticed when Ian was in it, the quality of my lines went up a bit, and he got the ones that weren't so good. He handled it very well. Do you know, I saw on UK Gold the first scene of Robot with Tom and Ian. Send for the doctor, quick, quick, quick. And I don't know if you have seen it. I was gobsmacked how good it was. It really is good, isn't it? It really, really was so good. Because of course when they've been doing that, I must have been tiddling off doing something else, either getting ready for my scene or concentrating on what I had to do, so I never really, really looked at it. And my goodness, they're very good together. You can hear in Tom's breath, because he's a bit nervous. You can hear the tightness of it, but they just carry through. And because of that, there's just an edge of fear.
Yes.
There's just that little spark.
Yes.
Are they going to go? Are we going to have to, you know, try and go?
Watchable stuff.
Oh,
Fear.
well, I was very pleased to be part of it, even though I wasn't in the scene. I thought, well, I hope I'm good when I come on.
John, how do you feel the role of the companion developed through your time as producer? Because again, you sort of reduced the numbers and ended again with a strong female character. How did that come about?
I don't know that the role of the companion changed at all. I think there was something about the chemistry of Sylvester and Sophie that created something quite special. And that's not to say that I'm denigrating anybody else that's played it during my time or before, but I don't think the role developed. The relationship off-screen was so good that somehow it was conveyed on-screen.
It does help.
Also, I think that Ace was of her time. She was what every young girl wanted to be. That feisty, slightly grunge is too late a word, but that kind of chunky-booted, weighed-in, you know, what they now call a ladette. You know, that equivalent of that era. And she was somebody for the female audience to emulate. But I don't actually think the role developed at all. You know, I think the role has been the same since 1963.
I couldn't agree more, because I actually felt myself being fitted into the role and what was necessary, and and I didn't mind because I had such a strong start, and I adapted it as much as I could. There are certain things they need out of the companion, and I could see myself being moulded into it, and that's what had to be. And you just made the odd little stab of what you thought you could do to put your little bit on it. But you had to become the assistant.
We went on the Clive James show, and he asked the question, apart from making the coffee and shrieking, what else did you do? And I let him get away with it. I said, oh, not much, no. I was scared, and I didn't know. And afterwards, I thought, oh my God, I got
You
to
tried
get
playing
back,
with Clive.
Say, look here, absolutely part of the story, absolutely, and being right there with the doc, so he got away with that.
Oh, yeah.
It is difficult to explain to anyone who hasn't been there.
I know.
I think that's why the girls always are so supportive.
But unfortunately, it's the role that actually, in the end, takes it over.
Yes.
You want it to be a fully rounded, developing character, like a soap opera. And let's face it, if you're doing 26 episodes a year, that's half a year, isn't it? Once a week you're on the telly. You want it to develop, but sadly, I think the role restricts it.
Well, this is certainly so in terms of K9, because there was no emotional life, there was no nexus, no connection.
Your emotion came from the people who were talking to
from
you.
my having no emotion whatsoever.
Putting their emotion on you if they felt.
Sure, precisely. I was there to be kicked. in some sense.
Did you pee on people?
No, that's very interesting. Because it was a story, again I don't remember the title, Pennant Roberts was directing, and there was a scene in what looked like a sort of colonnaded square on some capital city on some planet somewhere or other, and K9 was seen to be trundling around, and Pennant very cleverly said, right, just Matt or whoever it was, just stop K9 just for a couple of seconds behind that pillar there, and then move on. Yeah. So there might have been a little oil somewhere. It's all in the mind, absolutely.